Have you ever had one of those crashes where you're kind of in the air and your mind acknowledges that this is gonna hurt?
Yeah, all the time. It's such a bad feeling because there's nothing you can do, and it feels like you feel like you're in the air for like 30 seconds and just will not come down.
Hey, welcome to the Gifted Conversations, where I'm talking to people who are sharing their gift with those around them and the world at large. My guest today is Andrew Weibrecht. He's a downhill skier and two-time Olympic medalist. We talk about what it's like to be an Olympian, his mindset on race days, funny opportunities, remaining low-key despite global triumph, and a bunch of other things. So, grab your skis because we're hitting the slopes, bud. Andrew, what's up, man? Thanks for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime. So I was thinking about it, and I think the last time I saw you, I forgot my manners and didn't thank you for the Hillcrest Fund event. So just want to say thanks for helping out with that, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome what you guys are doing with that. So thank you, and it's always our pleasure. We're happy to help any way that we can.
Awesome. Are you up in Lake Placid right now?
Yep. Waiting for the hurricane in Lake Placid at the moment, and like everybody on the East Coast is, I guess. But
Yeah, it's some of the winds down here in the city are starting to pick up, so it'll be interesting to see what happens.
yeah,
So do you mind if I start this chat out with talking a little bit about your ski career?
yeah. Let's do it.
All right. So just to make sure I start this off right, so you're a two-time Olympic medalist
Yep.
in Super G, which is downhill skiing. So you got the bronze in 2010 in Vancouver, and then you got silver in Sochi in 2014.
Yep, that's right.
Awesome. So I mean, firstly, I just have to say, holy shit, because that is still such an impressive feat to have done that. It's still kind of mind blowing to me. Just kind of like looking back or thinking about it, do you miss some of those Olympic days?
Yeah, sometimes I do. I also missed, you know, the first year of my daughter's life too. So you put it on balance. I loved skiing and I love ski racing, and it was great, and it was an amazing experience for about 15 and a half years or 15 years, and then I don't know. I wouldn't say that I grew out of it, but I entered a point in my life where I had different priorities and different things were interesting to me. So when I left it on my own terms. Occasionally I'll be watching a race or something like that. I'll miss certain parts of it, the camaraderie or stuff like that. But the whole rigmarole of the thing is I don't pine for that too much anymore. It's not like getting on planes every week and changing hotels every week is really appealing to me anymore. So I'm happy to be home.
Yeah, man, I hear that. And that's kind of what I was going to go into next, just a little bit of perspective. So you said like you missed the first year of your daughter's life due to all the travel and how grueling it is. And I'm just kind of wondering if you can talk a little bit about that lifestyle as you were touching on, where you're talking about traveling, switching hotels, training. I imagine there was like countless mornings where you're waking up well before the sun to go out to the freezing cold onto like icy slopes.
Yeah, obviously most sports are early morning sports, so I definitely don't miss getting up at the crack of dawn to go ski and freeze my ass off. But yeah, outside of that, I mean, it's it's a fun lifestyle, and I loved it for a lot of years, but then it got to the point where it's just a lot. We were on the road pretty much May, home June, half of July. We were on the road, and then we go to Southern Hemisphere for August, September, home part of October, and then Colorado, and then gone all winter and back for April. So, that was kind of our yearly schedule that we just sort of like the hamster wheel that you jumped on and kept rolling. But we would typically I moved around less than some of the other guys that did other events did because I was a speed skier. So we kind of hunkered down for about a week at a time, typically when we would be at events, going in between events versus some of the other guys that were there for 1 day events. So I guess, in that respect, I was lucky, but still, I mean, just being on the road like that, anybody that's a performer knows what that's like, and you never hit any sort of normal.
Yeah, I can imagine never having any sense of normalcy with a crazy schedule like that. And sorry to derail you. Go for it.
Yeah, that was kind of our, we were on the speed side. So there's 4 events in alpine skiing. Two of them they call them tech events. So those are mostly 1 day events. And then the speed events are more kind of week long. So, for us, that was the nice thing, is that we could actually kind of settle into a place a little bit. But even then, I mean, you're showing up on a Tuesday, training runs Wednesday, Thursday, race Friday, Saturday, travel day Sunday, and then maybe a day off at the next place that you get to. So it was a lot, and then when you could get a break, or when there was maybe a week off of the schedule, you try to jump on a plane, get back home, and try not to get sick, and then stay home for 4 days and then turn it around. So that was that's kind of in a nutshell what we were doing. And again, it was great for a while, and I don't know, you just get that road fatigue after a number of years doing it.
I can only imagine. I mean, I know a couple. I know a couple. I mean, being from Lake Placid, I know a couple of other racers who, were definitely doing that pretty heavy all throughout high school and a little bit into college and whatnot. And yeah, man, that's no joke. That's so grueling just from hearing some of the stories.
Yeah, like I said, it was fun. um, and I wouldn't trade the experience for anything. I mean, I really mean that. It's just, it got to a point where I was in my 30s, and I was like, I married my wife for a reason, because I like her. I had kids for a reason, because I wanted to hang out with them. So I retired right before my second daughter was born in 2018, after the games in Pyeongchang, and it just seemed like the right time, and I'd done most of what I wanted to do in the sport, so it made sense.
Perfect. And I'm gonna ask a little bit about the retirement in a little bit, because I'm kind of curious about that as well. In prepping for this, I was rewatching some of your older races, some of the Olympic ones, and then some of the, like, the World Cup, I guess, or what they're called,
Yeah,
some of those races. And maybe it's because I know what was going to happen, or because I know you a little bit, but they're kind of emotional to watch. The hair was standing on the back of my neck, and it was really kind of fascinating. And through that, you got the nickname the War Horse, which, from what it sounds like, is kind of like because of the way your intensity of how you attack the mountain and your skiing style.
yeah. I think, I think, especially when I started on World Cup, I I was pretty young to get on the World Cup scene, and there's a lot of guys that obviously they had more experience, they were better skiers, and so to hang it all, I just basically had to up the intensity, and, and make up for everything that I lacked. I just doubled down on trying to take a lot of risk, and watch through a lot of the videos from early in my career, and there's quite a few pretty bad crashes in there too. So it's, as
Yeah.
much as it worked out occasionally, probably for every one time it worked out, there's probably 5 or 6 times that ended fairly catastrophically. So that was a serious learning process, but kind of fun, and I got a good nickname out of it. So that's cool.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's really cool to see somebody that, I mean, seeing some of the lines that you were taking, yeah, for sure, definitely risky and just ballsy. And first, to see somebody that leaves it all out on the slopes, like, after every race, it's cool to see that. It's really inspiring. Are you intense in, like, your everyday endeavors and outside life? Are you a competitive person, or when you're on the mountain, is it kind of like a different character?
Yeah, I would say I'm fairly competitive, but um, it's funny now that I don't have that outlet of skiing. I've felt like there's things I need to do to like up the intensity in my normal life sometimes. Yeah, it's when I was racing, I would come home and I would just like do the most mellow stuff that I could, I'd like go fishing and go hiking, and that's the type of stuff I like. Now since I retired, more into to mountain biking, and like I think I've still got to scratch that sort of extreme sport itch, which is kind of fun.
For sure.
I don't think the whole time I ski raced, my mountain bike wheels ever came off the ground, because I was just like in the mode where I take way too much risk as it is doing the stuff that I'm doing. So I can't add to that, but I'm like, yeah, whatever. If I break a collarbone, I break a collarbone. It's not like it's gonna derail my season or
Yeah. Well, as far as I mean, and the fact that like you're in Lake Placid, so like the fishing is great, the mountain biking up there is badass. Like that's you're in a good spot to kind of have some places to. I don't want to say let off steam, but just like to have to kind of scratch that extreme itch.
Yeah. Well, and just in general, I mean, I was traveling around the world, going to some of the coolest, really the coolest spots anywhere in the world as far as I was concerned. But every time that I got back to upstate New York, it was like, I'm home. This is where I want to be. And it's kind of cool to identify that at a young age and be able to look at something and be like, yeah, I just want to go home. I know when this is all over, that's where I'm going to be.
Yeah, even when I was up there a couple weeks ago, there's just I mean, I guess it's because of growing up there, but there's just something magical about there. And no matter how long I'm in the city or wherever I'm at, there's always this piece of me that's always like when I get to go to Lake Placid or when I get to go back there, I just feel at ease and feel better. So
Yeah.
something beautiful about it.
Oh, for sure.
As far as like your mentality goes, can you talk to me a little bit about like what it's like on race day, like what's going through your head and maybe like what you're doing pre-race, kind of what you're doing during the race, and then immediately after you cross the finish line?
Yeah. It was funny because when I started my career, I raced totally differently than I trained. And I think that was part of the reason why I had a lot of inconsistency. And I learned throughout the process that the more I could up my intensity when I was training and kind of even put myself in that mental space where I, I like got to the point where I was nervous to take a training run, because I felt like if I blew my first training run, which is effectively like a race run, then I was going to be pissed that I had a crappy day of training. And so I actually was able to get myself so exercised for training towards the end of my career that I kind of like was able just to treat every single day like a race, and that made racing so much easier. So, in terms of preparation, it was, race day preparation was a year long thing, really, or like, soon as we started doing on snow training, that was like when the race preparation started from a mental standpoint,
Mm,
which was kind of a cool place to get to, because then I don't know, it's like more fun to work on that level where you feel like you're putting pressure, but it also brings out kind of that next little bit of juice out of you, Um,
sure.
so that was kind of like on the macro scale, that was sort of the way that I thought about it. And then obviously there's everything that goes into kind of the physical preparation for the actual event itself. So that's, and again, like that's part of the mental thing, like knowing that I was physically prepared, knowing that I was physically activated, or like my legs were recovered, and I'd done everything that allowed my body physically to be in the place where it needed to be. That helped the mental side of it. And then really leading up to the race run, it was everything I did was similar to what I was doing in training. And I did a lot of breathing techniques, because I was a pretty nervous person. I had a lot of anxiety, so I just like I had to chill myself out to the greatest extent possible. Otherwise, I would just like my mind would start going, and I couldn't hardly do anything. Um, it's funny, like stuff I learned is I couldn't like watch any of the race that was going on around me. I had just had to like ignore the fact that there's a race. I couldn't look at social media, because like that would take me out of my element and freak me out. I couldn't do anything like other than stand in the woods and like close my eyes until 5 minutes before, and just like be like, oh wow, there's a starting gate. Like I should definitely kick out of this and try to ski as fast as I can. And that was like what it took for me to do well. And um, yeah, it's kind of funny. It's just it was a weird learning process that took a long, long time. You know, probably took me 13 or 14 years to get to that point. And then once I was there, I was like, oh, it's so simple. But
I mean, even just kind of hearing you after having watched those races and then just hearing you talk about this, it's like I could just feel that through this conversation on my end, where just like if I was to like I don't know much different level, but like before you're about to, I was about to go on stage with the band or whatever, where it's like a lot of breathing exercises, where it's like you got this, don't worry about it. Let alone if you're competing at the Olympics or something where it's a high profile event turns out. So yeah, clearing your mind and whatnot.
yeah,
How how fast are you guys going down that the track?
the fastest venues are, there's one in Switzerland and there's one in Austria. So the Hahnenkamm in Kitzbühel, which is like the probably the biggest ski race in the world, and then the Laberhorn in Wengen, Switzerland, which is the oldest. I think might be the oldest continuous ski race in the world. Those were both around 100 miles an hour.
Jesus Christ, man,
Yeah, it
that
sounds like even saying it right now, having been out of the sport for a couple of years, it just sounds stupid. Like,
yeah, exactly. And then watching it online just doesn't give it justice compared to when I've never gone that fast, but even snowboarding where it's hitting 40, 50 miles an hour or whatever, where you're like, you get past hearing the wind and it's just like almost white noise at that point. But yeah, that's seeing some of the races, it's insane how fast you guys go. It blows my mind.
yeah, and that's probably the biggest failing of ski racing as a sport, is that they haven't figured out how to like translate into video how the speed, and even just if you go to a live event, like the sound of somebody skiing by you is like, it's loud. It sounds like a race car coming by
For
you.
sure.
It's kind of crazy. It adds an element for sure.
Yeah. So let's say, when you're when you finish a race, whether that's for a bronze, silver medal, or just in general, when you cross that finish line, what are some of the first things that kind of come to your mind right when you finish the race?
Um, Usually some form of accomplishment and some form of disappointment. If I'm being totally honest, I mean, there is rarely a race that I came down and I said to myself like, that was kind of a wasted opportunity. And obviously, like anything, you fixate, or it's hard not to fixate on the tiny little things that you did poorly, and
For
and
sure.
as compared to all the things you did right. Um,
Yeah.
like I'm sure music, you like play a 4 minute song, you're like, God, I missed those three friggin' notes. Like,
Always, yeah.
you
I would
know,
often miss more than that, but yeah, it was never like focus on the good things. Always like what I did wrong for sure.
yeah. So yeah, I mean that was part of it, and then um, the probably the one exception to that was in Sochi at the Olympics when I came down, and I thought with my start position and just kind of where I was at with my career, I didn't really think I had any chance at that day, and I skied out of my mind. I got to the bottom. I knew I skied out of my mind, and I really thought that it was, I was like, that was a solid top 10 run. Like, that was cool. I feel like I left everything on the table today. I skied as well as I could. It's just, um, kind of the feeling going into that race is that anybody who started after 15 probably didn't have much of a chance, just because of the weather and how warm it was.
Mm.
And yeah, so that was the one time I probably came down and really surprised myself. Um, where the result was better than I felt in a big way.
I seriously like almost got emotional from rewatching that race the other night. It was yeah, just like some of the lines you took. It was beautiful, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That was cool. I mean, that was a cool day because I mean for a lot of reasons, but um, in between Sochi and or in between Vancouver and Sochi, I really had like kind of a shitty 4 years. I directly after Vancouver, I had shoulder surgery. Then that next season, I raced 2 races and had shoulder surgery. And then I came back for a couple days in the spring and broke my ankle and then had ankle surgery and then another ankle surgery. So
Jesus.
I was kind of like, yeah, I was kind of like, at the end of my rope to a certain extent. And, I went into that race and I sort of was thinking about retiring, sort of just, this was fun, but I'm really not having that much fun anymore. And
Mm.
I went into that race just with the mentality that I was gonna do it my way and I was gonna ski the way I wanted to and probably wasn't gonna work out, but that was what I was there for that day. And um, I don't know, stuff's weird. It all worked out, and that led to the last 4 years of my career, which really were the best years that I had, where I was like on top of the not on top of the World Cup, but in there, every week and until my knee got bad, I was kind of a contender, which was cool.
I mean, just hearing that makes me so happy. Just knowing that, the last couple of years you were crushing it. It's really great. And I was going to ask about that because I know even when you got the bronze medal in Vancouver, in a sense, it kind of feels like you kind of came out of nowhere. Like it didn't seem like you were one of the front runners, and then going into Sochi, uh, I mean, maybe a little bit the same. They weren't necessarily expecting you to get on the podium, or maybe they were. But like, I'm more so just curious about like the pressure and like how you dealt with that, or especially with some of the injuries that you had in between those two Olympics. Clearly, you didn't cave to the pressure, but did you take that into account at all, or were you mostly just focused on kind of rehabbing and just racing as good as you could your way?
Yeah, that was kind of that was sort of it, just rehabbing and racing the way that I could. I would say going into Vancouver, I was young. I mean, I was 24, so I'd been on the World Cup for a couple years full time, and I was actually that year, that 2009 2010 season, I was really starting to hit my stride where I was having consistent good races, but I had never broken through to that next level. I was like 10th to 10th to 15th every single race, which when you look in the context of ski racing, the difference between 10th and second or first or third is usually, it's not much. It's kind of that mental barrier that you need to break through.
I mean, and those results are still impressive. Like breaking it.
Yeah, no, and I was psyched with the way that I was racing, and just I don't know. I came into a day. I had, in contrast to Sochi, I had an early start number. The weather again wasn't great. It was fairly warm, and I capitalized on a good situation and was able to put down that run. So, I mean, the beauty of it is that I came in as an underdog, so I didn't have much to live up to. Um, and then after that, those 4 years, I actually, like, by the end of that 4 years in between, I was demoted back to the B team. So I was really an
Right.
underdog, you know.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
So, my goal in going into the 2014 season was to just make the Olympics because I had such a good time at the Olympics the last time. I just wanted to do it again and then maybe call it quits. Just, with the injuries, I was definitely getting beat down. Um, and I barely made the team in 14. And, was just happened to, I don't know, 2 weeks before the games, I started skiing really well. I put everything all together. Like mentally, I started to put things together, and physically, I just figured out a lot of stuff and was able to put down that result, which was awesome. I went to the next World Cup and I got seventh in the next World Cup, which was my World Cup result in 4 years, and then started the next season was, top five in a bunch of races. So it just kind of, it's once I got everything back on track and I figured out where I needed to be mentally, it was, I don't know, it just all made sense again.
That's so cool to hear. And I think I was reading that the cottage was they had some sort of warhorse beer that they were pouring.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that. I wish I was there for that because that sounds awesome.
I know. I wish I was there for all the Olympic parties. Sounded awesome. That was my biggest regret, is that wasn't there to be wasn't there to enjoy it.
Yeah, I can imagine just knowing the space and the crowd. That I bet those were some wild times, especially when they knew how well you were doing. That must have been a blast.
Yeah.
So you were talking about some of the injuries that you had. Have you ever had one of those crashes where you're kind of in the air and your mind acknowledges that this is going to hurt?
Yeah, all the time.
Oh man.
Um, it's such a bad feeling because there's nothing you can do, and it feels like something happens and you feel like you're in the air for like 30 seconds and just will not come down.
Oh my
And
god.
oh, I don't miss that.
Yeah, dude, I can only imagine. The most serious times I've ever been hurt have been snowboarding, and I think
Yeah.
mostly because 'cause you're just going so fast the entire time, so let alone if you're going 80, 90, 100 miles an hour and you go into a fence or a tree or something scary.
Yeah, and it happens so quickly. Like you don't have time to think about what's going wrong. Like everything's fine 1 second, and then all of a sudden, literally milliseconds later, you're like upside down and like looking at the sky, just waiting for the ground to smash against your back, and
Yeah. Oh man. I too I did that once. The injury wasn't bad, but like I don't know what happened, but I just fell and then the impact from the goggles like literally just split my glasses right in half. So then
yeah.
I was blind snowboarding, but it's crazy how like you said how quickly it happens and all of a sudden you're like staring at it with a mouthful of snow or the sky or
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
Did you get any like random or funny opportunities that you kind of had to decline from your success at the Olympics? Like, I don't know, like the Gaddy's corner store wanting to like sponsor you or something?
um, Probably the one that I personally thought was funniest was I got asked to come on American Ninja Warrior, but
Nice.
yeah, which would have been awesome. But I've had both my shoulders operated on. I can't even like reach over my head, so
Oh man.
it's kind of a non-starter. But yeah,
I love that. That's perfect. That's super interesting. And I mean that kind of goes perfectly with this next point. So the thing that I've also found super interesting is like, you've got medals, you're on the cover of Sports Illustrated that one year with all those other top athletes,
yeah,
but it seems like you've kind of remained under the radar globally. I mean, in Lake Placid, you're kind of, you're a hometown hero. You got the parades and rightfully so. But yeah, just did you always kind of want to keep a low key media presence?
yeah. I It was one of those things where I couldn't bring myself to do it. Unfortunately, it was like, even knowing that's where the money was and that's how you actually translated a performance, especially in this day and age with social media and all that stuff, where you took a performance and monetized it. I would get excited about it for like 2 days and then just be like, I can't do it. And I don't know. I'm just a terrible self promoter. Um, which I don't mind. I always knew that I was going to have to work after skiing anyway. So whether I made a little bit more or less money was never a deal breaker. Would have been nice to, but
Yeah.
it's not like some of the people that I raced with, that they're headed for early retirement after they got done racing. I knew I wasn't that good, so figured I'd keep my dignity and just get a job after I got done racing.
That's so cool to hear, and I've always been kind of curious about that. So it's interesting to see to see the path that is available and whatnot. But I much respect on yeah, just keeping it low key and humble, man. That's rad.
Yeah, and to be totally clear, I don't begrudge anybody that does. I don't know. Wasn't me.
I know for sure, teach their own, and it's that's awesome that you knew that about yourself. So that's great. And I know you mentioned it before, but you said you were like 24 when you got your first medal.
Yeah, yeah, I was 24.
And yeah, did you're a young man at that point. Did that kind of mess with your head at all, or did your life kind of change after you got that, or was it still kind of hard work and just grinding?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it probably did mess with my head a little bit. But at the same time, then right away I was hurt and I was injured and I was rehabbing, and I got a dose of reality really quickly actually after that. Um, so I mean, it was cool, and I think if I had been able to take the momentum out of that Olympic result, I could probably would have messed with my head more. Um, but I literally got done with that, and then was 2 weeks later, I was in the hospital after crashing in the next race. So
Oh
it
my
was it was
god.
it was kind of a quick come to reality type thing that you still gotta put all the pieces together in a ski race. It's not Nobody cares how well you did in your last race.
Yeah, there's no way to be no better way to be humbled than yeah, getting hurt or getting put in the hospital, man. Jesus.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
and you were saying so you retired on your own terms. That was you said 2018?
yeah, yeah. After the games in 2018.
Yeah. So what's your relationship with skiing now? Is it all kind of like love and enjoyable? Is there collateral damage?
No, I mean, I didn't ski a lot the year after I retired. I did a little bit of stuff that was some clinics and things like that people asked me to come to, or something along those lines. But I didn't ski a ton. And then this past season, so the 2019-2020 season, actually with COVID, I got once everything shut down, I got really into ski touring, and that's been my passion with it. I mean, I still love skiing, and I like ski racing. I started commentating the last couple seasons, so that's been fun, and I've realized that more so than actually doing the act of ski racing, I'd rather talk about it at this point.
Yeah.
you know,
That's
um,
cool you're commentating. I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah, I've been doing a little bit for NBC, and hopefully have the opportunity to do a bit more. But yeah, I mean, I love skiing. Especially adventure skiing, I think is really fun. Where you can go up something that nobody's been to in a while or maybe ever, and have the opportunity to ski that. That's really cool to me. Um, Resorts are fun, but I don't know. It's not. I wouldn't seek it out at this point. Maybe later.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a bit of a difference of skiing like East Coast powder at Whiteface compared to, some untouched terrain somewhere else. So I hear you
Right.
there. I think you mentioned some of these a little bit, but I'm just curious. Like, are there some lessons that you've learned from skiing that you kind of apply to your daily life now?
Yeah, totally. It's interesting. I mean, I would say skiing taught me just to do everything as hard as you can. And um, probably I don't know. I figured this out after I got done with my career, that I had this mentality where I would, like, if I had a prescribed workout or something like that, or training session, and it was 3 hours long, I had this weird mental thing where I couldn't stop until 2 hours. And that was just like, that was the way I would do it. So I actually did the math on it when I was done racing for a talk. And if I had stopped all my workouts 2 hours short, it would have equated to like 7 weeks worth of working out throughout my career. So I think that that's a pretty good lesson that I've taken out of skiing, that it's just it really is the small things that matter. Like, you can hit all the big points, but what differentiates you from other people and in terms of your performance is how well you're able to do the small stuff. And um that's been huge. I think I don't mind grinding. I feel like that's something that you inherently learn ski racing, because even a great season, if you win 2 races out of 30 and you crash in 8 of them, like, that's still a great season. And so I think you just get into this mentality where you're like, okay, well, moving on to tomorrow, like, gonna figure out how to bring it as hard as I can tomorrow. I think that's been really helpful to me. Both in terms of starting a career after racing, and then also just doing stuff with my family. I mean, like, I have all this energy that I had for, you know, focused on one thing for years and years. And now I'm just trying to figure out productive ways to translate that into other areas of my life without like driving my wife crazy. So it's a good mix. Like, I can spend some of it on them, some of it at work, and go ride my bike for a few hours, and it's all good. It gets spread around pretty evenly.
There you go, man. That's rad. You've got it dialed in. Uh,
I don't know if I have it dialed, but it's like everything, man. It's a work in progress, right?
yeah, true, valid point. Work in progress. And then what if we'll see how this goes, but I'm just curious, what are some things that you hope people take away from having seen you ski?
Uh, I mean, I'm really proud of the way that I used to compete. I think that's the biggest thing. I just I used to get quite a bit of criticism. Sometimes not quite a bit, but some criticism when I was racing, that I wasn't always the smartest skier. Um, where I would take too much risk where I didn't need to take risk. But at the same time, occasionally that worked out, and people always look at my career and they're like, wow, like, how does this guy, how is he never better than eighth in the World Cup standings, and he has 2 Olympic medals? Like, that doesn't make sense. And it's because of that mentality that, yes, there is a traditional way to do it, but I want to do it my way because that's what I feel good about. And I hope that some portion of that gets translated in my skiing. And I think people that followed my career can see that. And when I was, really on top of my game, it was my way of doing it. It was easy to make fun of that when I was a little bit off my game, because it was typically disastrous. But when I did it well, I did it well. So
Yeah, that's interesting, man, and yeah, that makes sense. And you were mentioning that you're like giving some, you're helping give some ski clinics. And I feel like I don't necessarily know, but what are you kind of doing to kind of get involved with the community and the kids, whether that's in Lake Placid or wherever? I feel like you're doing some nice stuff or
yeah, I try to do some stuff at NICEF. Obviously it's tough with working at the hotel because we're busy when they're busy. So as I get into things more, I'd like to definitely get more involved with that, especially the midweek stuff. I love the Mount Pisgah program. I think that's such a cool program over in Saranac. Just because I don't know, it gives everybody an opportunity to get involved. And I work with Make a Wish Foundation and Double H Ranch downstate a little bit. They have an adaptive ski program for kids that have illnesses or injuries. So those are a couple things that I've had the opportunity to get involved with, and I've really enjoyed that. I feel like it's been pretty rewarding and a lot of fun. And um, I don't know. I'm always looking for the next thing.
well, that's I think that's I don't know the I'm unfamiliar with the Pisca program, but that's so cool that you're doing some of the nice stuff, the clinics, the Make a Wish Foundation, and I think that's just super inspiring for people to see that. And I love that you're able to give back and yeah, and do that, especially from where you're coming from. Yeah, the other thing I was gonna say is, what do you tell aspiring or young kids that want to try to have an Olympic career, kind of follow in your footsteps?
Probably don't do it the way I did it. But, no, I mean, I think a couple things. I mean, they are corny. They sound corny because they are corny. But I think the biggest thing is that you have to have a passion for it and you have to have fun. Like I know that sounds glaringly obvious, but I think a lot of people forget that. And with how almost like militant kids sports are these days, it's just you have to look at what it's really all about. And whether you're able to take it all the way through the steps and to the highest level, like that's great, but at least have a great experience doing it. So I think that's one thing, and the other is that you can't be afraid to fail. I mean, I think
Mm,
if you look at anybody's career that's good, I mean, it's basically a failure and then an adaptation just stacked on top of themselves until they reach the highest level of what they're able to do. And I think that is so important because there's so much emphasis on you have to be this good at this level and you have to be this good at this level. And a bad race is a bad race. It's not. A bad race is a learning opportunity, and it's a great race if you can take a bad situation and figure out what you did well and what you did poorly, and you're able to turn that into something that you can move forward with. And that's something I'm pretty passionate about when I talk to kids, because I feel like the forest gets lost for the trees. It's just so often, especially now, and same with parents. When I talk to parents, I'm like, you guys gotta. It's not like that. That's not what
I like that point about failure and then adaptation. Um, I think that's or like an adaptation. I think that's so like, skiing or just kind of life in general, where it's like you do something, you fail, kind of figure it out, adapt, and then go on and then kind of keep that trajectory going. So I haven't heard it put that way, but I like that.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a total failure. I mean, it's like everything doesn't need to implode for you to learn from it. It can be half good and half bad, but as long as you recognize the good and figure out how to make the bad better, then it's going to move in the right direction. And that's probably the thing I learned, most when I was injured, because I was in a lot of cases I was relearning how to ski. I
Damn.
not to that extent, but I got to the point where I had all this confidence and I had everything moving in the right direction. And then all of a sudden I had to figure out how to rebuild that. And there was so many poor days that I had to kind of rethink the way that I thought of, I looked at skiing. I was like, okay, today we're going to go out and just try to figure out how to do this one super basic thing well.
Mm.
And you play around with it and you're like, okay, now what do I do to take that to the slightly next level? And that's how you build, and that's how you actually get better. And it's not about skipping steps.
I can only imagine the difficulty coming back from an injury. Like, sure to get the kind of the physical motions back, but for me, I think most of my stuff is always like the mental, where it's like, oh, I was at this level, and now I'm hurt, and now I have to kind of get back that confidence, and that's always been like the hard thing for me. So I can only imagine the difficulty if it's like, especially when it's just so high pressure, is like downhill racing. It's intense.
Yeah, the mental part of it is super tough, especially, I mean, anything that you do at a high level, the margins are so small because there's enough people that are really good at it. So, in a men's ski race, sometimes first to 30th was a second, which is less than 1% of the length of the race, and that's how much your levels dropped. It's 1%. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about it that way, but yeah, then the whole game just gets how do I do it without hesitation? How do I do it without any lack of fear? Takes time. That's the toughest part, is overcoming those things mentally.
Yeah, and then especially with skiing where it's like tenths of a second, hundredths of a second actually make a
Right.
huge difference where it's like
Yeah.
to even calculate that. Yeah. Um, so you were, if correct me if I'm wrong, you were born and you were born in Lake Placid and you grew up here.
Yeah. Yep.
How has growing up in Lake Placid and then skiing at places like Whiteface, how has that kind of shaped you as a person and or athlete?
I think it was huge for me athletically. It gave it. I mean, really, the way that I ski was totally because of Whiteface Mountain. Just sometimes variable conditions as we get on the East Coast. You just today can be 180 degrees from the conditions tomorrow type deal. So
Yep.
I think that made me pretty adaptable, which was really cool. And then it's also a tough technical mountain. So as soon as I got to the level where courses were tough and technical as an athlete, then I had no issues. It was bridging the gap from like easy, like that whole moderate difficulty was really tough for me. Like the NORAM circuit was difficult for me because I was more suited for World Cup style tracks that were harder snow, faster, tougher to ski, and that's where I shine. So it's funny in contrast to a lot of guys, I barely made it through the NORAM side of it, but then as soon as I started World Cup, I instantly got better, which is
Interesting.
usually the opposite. But so I credit Whiteface a lot. It's a tough mountain, and you gotta be gritty to ski it, and that's cool. I think that's fun, and I think that sort of shaped my mentality towards sport. Is like, maybe it's not going to feel good, but if you get to the bottom, it might not be too bad.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've told some other friends this, but having grown up snowboarding Whiteface and often, as its nickname, Ice Face, where it's just sheer ice the entire way down, the confidence that I built there to ski or to snowboard anywhere else, it's like not child's play or a piece of cake, but it's like I grew up snowboarding some pretty crazy terrain, so anything else doesn't intimidate me as much.
Yeah, you're going to be able to handle anything, no matter what, once you grow up at Whiteface, for sure.
Yeah, and so as you were talking about working after your retirement. What's your role at the Mirror Lake Inn?
I kind of do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Pretty much just fill in for whatever needs to be done. But I've done quite a bit of marketing stuff. Sort of getting into the operation side a bit more, and then yeah, I mean, really like this summer, because of everything that's going on, we're fairly understaffed. So I've been, helping clean rooms, helping out on the property, like really whatever needs to be done to keep the wheels turning.
Yeah, wow, I did yeah, doing it all for real. Uh, I mean, so I was just kinda curious, like, what's the transition like from, Olympic athlete to kind of business owner or, a little bit of everything?
I think it was kind of cool. I sort of intentionally left myself a year of undergrad in between when I was done racing, and so I went to undergrad throughout my racing career, and I left 1 year so that I could kind of give myself a transition year between athletics and like what I was going to do next. And through that time, I was going to school. I was also working here, and I really started to enjoy the hospitality industry. It's pretty cool in the sense that you're just trying to help other people have a really good time. So that kind of feels good. But just in general, I mean, I think the transition was easy for me because, like I was saying, I have all this energy that is sort of what I was spending on athletics, and I had to figure out productive ways to channel that. So I went to school and was way better at school after racing than I ever was when I was younger. And I came into this, and it's just like you knock through a to-do list of things and you're like, yeah, but now what? Like what else can I do? and and that's kind of fun. I don't know. I like it. It's definitely different, for sure. I mean, than training all year and doing all that. But I think with anything, it's up to you to figure out how to challenge yourself. And being a competitive person, I can be just as competitive trying to challenge myself in this world as I can in athletics.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was talking to your brother actually a couple some or winters ago over. I was at the cottage having some drinks, and
Yeah.
he was saying how at that point, like you're doing a little bit of everything. So I think he was saying how the guests like really appreciate the fact that this Olympian is like whatever pouring them coffee or greeting them or this and
Yeah.
that. And as far as hospitality goes, like what is there a cooler experience than that? Like I don't think so. So I think that's super cool you're doing that.
Yeah, it's fun. I really do enjoy it, and it was cool because I spent so much time in Europe, and they do hospitality different than in the U.S. And it's actually kind of the way that my parents always did it here, where they wanted a relationship with all their guests and to be able to know them by name, type of deal. And that's how the Europeans are. They're into that, and they like to sit down and have a cup of coffee with you. So I think that's cool when I can have those interactions and when I can spend time and get to know the people that love this place as much as I do, for lack of a better way of putting it. Yeah, it's fun, and I don't know. It's just trying to, again, figure out ways to channel my energy and intensity.
Yeah, well, no, it's. I mean, from what I've heard, it's you're crushing it, and it's great to see. And I'm gonna be mindful of your time, so just got a couple more for you.
Yeah.
So you have two young daughters now.
Hmm.
How old are they?
2 and 4.
Have they started skiing yet? Are they gonna ski, or is that
Yeah, well, I mean, they can do whatever they want.
true?
I'm not. I definitely, being a parent, I realize that kids are totally have a mind of their own. So I would encourage them to do what they're passionate about in the same way that my parents encouraged me to do what I was passionate about. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think the beauty of being up here is that you have the opportunity to try so many different things. Denya, my wife, her dad was a jumper. Denya raced. She raced Nordic. There's just so many opportunities. I obviously raced alpine, so it's whatever they want to do. I mean, if it's luge or bobsled or not sports at all, and they like other stuff, that's cool too. It's just about exposing them to as many different things as possible. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, my daughter does ski. My older daughter, and we were gonna start my younger daughter this spring, but then COVID happened and everything shut down, and so we're like waiting for
Yeah,
that perfect day, and then it came like March 20th after the mountain was shut down because of COVID. 5 days too late, but it's all good. There's next year.
yeah, yeah. They've got time for sure. Yeah, so I'll ask real quick. So let's say, after you have a good race or get a medal, how do you celebrate?
Uh, I don't know, somewhat self-destructively. You know, we always tried to be pretty good about it and pretty mindful that we had another race in a few days. But um, I don't know, especially at the Olympics, it's pretty cool. And how many times does that happen? So tend to let loose a little bit, but I think I kept it under wraps pretty well. Um, I
Gotcha.
didn't get sent home like some of the athletes did.
Okay, good. Well, I'm happy to hear that. And then just to kind of close things out, I know it's kind of a weird time and whatnot, but I'm just curious, like, what's kind of next for you?
um, yeah, that's a good question. I've thought about going back to school. I was sort of toying with that idea when COVID happened, but I don't know. To be totally honest, I'm pretty happy being here doing what I'm doing at the moment. And I'm going to continue to do some of the stuff that I have within the ski world. I enjoy doing occasional clinics and stuff like that. So I'll probably keep doing that. I'll hopefully continue to commentate because that's fun. And, I enjoy that quite a bit. And then, yeah, the rest of the time, I just hope to be in Placid for the foreseeable future anyway.
Yeah, not a bad place to be. I had so
Not,
much fun up there, so.
yeah, not at all.
All right. Andrew, I really appreciate you taking the time chatting, man. It's been super fun, and it's always nice to catch up with you.
Yeah, likewise. No, always good to talk to you, Artur.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon. Enjoy the day. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Gifted Conversations. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, tell a friend, or leave a review. Or if you hated it, feel free to tell me to fuck off or leave a negative comment. Anything is welcome. Appreciate the support, and I'm sending you positive thoughts and energy.